Clementine, what's the name of this show?
Cricket.
Oh, I thought it was called Fr'Eke'y Cricket.
Fr'Eke'y Cricket.
Who's Fr'Eke'y?
Oh.
All right. I'm sorry, but we do have this thing here for this episode. Ezekiel, what is your question? I will answer it as best as I can.
Okay. In your all-time test 11,
Mhm.
you have to pick between Glenn McGrath and Jimmy Anderson.
Okay, Glenn McGrath.
Would you like to go further on that?
Why would you say Jimmy Anderson?
I wouldn't say Jimmy Anderson.
Okay, but why was Jimmy Anderson your second choice? Like, why was it McGrath versus Anderson? That's what I'm interested
To
in.
be honest, in my head, they seem familiar,
Okay.
except for Jimmy Anderson swings. Glenn McGrath uses line and length for.
Yeah, they both use line and length, but you're right. Anderson was a swing bowler and McGrath is a seam bowler. So they're very different. Also, they're quite different in height. I think Jimmy Anderson's probably about 6 foot tall, 6'1", and McGrath was a lot taller and had a very high release point. So very different kinds of bowlers. McGrath was pretty much good from the start of his career. Like within the first couple of years, he becomes the Glenn McGrath that we know of. And Anderson has about a 10-year period where he's a very good test bowler, but I don't think anyone would say he's a great bowler. So he goes on to have a brilliant career. And I thought maybe the reason you were comparing them is because they're two seam bowlers with just an awful lot of wickets, because they're not just bowlers with good records, right?
Yeah, McGrath's.
Are you bored?
No.
Do you want to go or stay?
Stay.
Then sit properly.
Like with McGrath's 563 wickets, Jimmy Anderson's 704.
That's a lot of wickets, right? So I can see why you compare them. But I think if you go through the impact that they both had, I don't think you could compare them at all. Do you know what that bowling averages were off the top of your head?
McGrath, 20?
Glenn McGrath was around 2021, wasn't he? And I think Jimmy Anderson was around 25, 26 by the end of his career. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think with Anderson, once you factor in that it's 700 wickets at 26, like if you took 300 wickets at 26, I think you'd probably be more likely to be a great for your country, but maybe not a great of all time. But once you take 500, 600, 700, then I think you become a great, because that kind of durability. Think about it this way. For essentially 20 years, England didn't need... You can't hit my microphone, baby.
Microphone.
This one, you can't touch it. Think about it this way. For almost 20 years, England didn't have to worry about another fast bowler, right? They just had a guy who was going to come in and was going to be good all the time. He wasn't always great in all conditions. He had to, get better in certain places. But in the end, he was pretty good at those things. But the difference between that and McGrath is that McGrath, for 14 years, was arguably one of the greatest bowlers of all time. So we look at something called match factor. Have you heard us talk about match factor before?
Yes.
Do you know what it is?
How many matches they've played?
No. So match factor, that's a good guess. Match factor basically looks at the bowling averages in the games that they played. Or the batting. Clem, hit my microphone again. Do you want to go now? So match factor basically looks at the bowling average in the games they played. So comparing them to the other seam bowlers in their games. Glenn McGrath is basically the best we've ever seen by match factor. Like, he played on a lot of flat Australian wickets where the Australians made a lot of runs. He had other good bowlers around him, and he still dominated the other good bowlers in his team. Right? Like, he was just an absolute genius. And Jimmy Anderson was fine. Like, he wasn't bad on match factor or anything. He was still obviously one of the best bowlers in his game, but he doesn't pop. And I think that's one thing that I would look at. The other thing I would look at is, let me take your sister's hair out of my mouth. I think the other thing that I would look at is the fact that Glenn McGrath could bowl absolutely everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So
really durable. You can bowl in almost any stop that. In almost any condition.
Exactly, and also all the way through his career. Whereas I think Jimmy Anderson became a better bowler as he became older. I think McGrath was always like that. So I think you've got that flexibility. But there's one reason, and I think you might be able to work this out, why I would always go for a bowler like McGrath over a bowler like Anderson.
McGrath's Australian.
No, although nice shirt that you're wearing today. No, it's not his nationality. Because he's tall. Why do I like bowlers who are tall?
Because they've got great release points.
They've got great release points.
Really good at placing the balls in places. Like Curtly Ambrose was more like this. First ball to place the ball down.
So it's not because they're good at doing that, because a short bowler can do that as well. It's because when the pitch is flat and it's not doing anything,
Yeah.
Jimmy Anderson can't get anything out of the surface, and he can bowl a little bit fuller or a little bit shorter, but he can't really do anything crazy, right? When the pitch is flat for a tall bowler, whether it be your man Curtly Ambrose, Joel Garner, or Glenn McGrath, they can then use their height as another way of getting it. So most bowlers are just trying to get the ball past this part of your edge or this part of your edge. A tall bowler can also consistently, even on a wicket without much bounce, get more extra bounce. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for me, I just think Glenn McGrath is a lot more rounded. Who's the better bat?
Jimmy Anderson.
I saw Jimmy Anderson make 70 in a test match, and it was one of the worst experiences of my life. In fact, I probably think Jimmy Anderson bat more than like Eddie Taylender in my life. He was dismissed off the second last ball against Sri Lanka and lost a test match. Lost a series, actually. I remember him crying after that. I was there when Michael Clark said to him, "Get ready for a broken beep arm." I've been through most of the great Jimmy Anderson innings. I've either been watching it live or at the ground there. Glenn McGrath was more a fun tailender, I found, than Jimmy Anderson. But there's one great thing about Jimmy Anderson, that if I was ever going to pick him over Glenn McGrath, I'd pick him for this one thing.
What?
Jimmy Anderson loved playing the reverse sweep and would try and play at every single ball because he didn't play any other shot. And to be honest, I think Glenn McGrath has let himself down quite a bit. So in an all-time 11, do you think Jimmy Anderson is that close to an all-time 11? Or Clem, watch my microphone. Do you think Jimmy Anderson is that close to an all-time 11? Or were you just picking him because you were looking at the top wicket-taking list?
I just picked him because I just picked him.
If you just off the top of your head, and don't worry if you get this wrong, I mean, there is no right answers here. Who do you think are the best 5 fast bowlers of all time?
That's my next question.
We'll see you on another edition of
Fr'Eke'y Cricket.
Can you say bye, Clem?
Bye.
Wave to the people. Wave to your audience. They can't see your hand. Get your hands up. You're too short. You can't even wave.